When you're working with arc welding operations, there are a number of safety procedures to follow. Each company is responsible for developing specific guidelines, policies, and procedures, as a short video training program cannot list all potential hazards or safety elements. This program is simply a guideline of basic safety measures designed as safety awareness, but it's not a complete or comprehensive program. Let's begin with the area used for such operations. The welding area must be protected against fire hazards posed by combustible and flammable materials. Combustibles must be located at least 35 feet from the work site. If this is not possible, combustibles must be protected with flame-proof covers or metal or other fireproof shielding. Floors on which combustible materials such as paper clippings, wood shavings, or textile fibers accumulate must be swept clean for a radius of 35 feet. Keep in mind that welding temperatures are extremely high, and welding on metal can create heat transfer from the metal part to combustible materials located nearby. Welding operations have caused a high number of major fires. Due to the potential for fires, explosions, and health hazards, arc welding must be carefully controlled. Never weld in the presence of mixtures of flammable gases, vapors, liquids, or dusts with air, or inside improperly cleaned tanks or equipment which have previously contained such material. Never weld near large quantities of exposed, readily ignitable materials such as bulk sulfur, baled paper, or cotton. Never weld near vapor degreasing operations or spray booths due to potential fire hazards. Some chemicals can decompose under the ultraviolet radiation of the welding operation and become quite dangerous. Always weld only in those areas authorized by management. Protection in the form of curtains or enclosures is required when other persons could be harmed by the effects of the flying slag or eye hazards. All arc welding equipment must be designed to operate in the gases, dust and light rays produced by the welding arc. Under unusual environmental conditions, such as the presence of corrosive fumes, steam, or excessive humidity, oil vapors, inclement weather, or seacoast or shipboard operations, special safety features may be required. Remember to follow all printed rules and operating instructions supplied by the manufacturer. Don't operate arc welders in wet environments, and dry all machines and equipment that have become wet before attempting to weld. Before drying wet equipment, make sure you disconnect the primary power first. When making connections and cabling, spread out coiled welding cable prior to use and check weld lead cables for damaged insulation and work lead cables for exposed conductors. Replace all weld leads spliced within 10 feet of the holder. Check electrode holders for loose or exposed connections to reduce the shock hazard. Check for leaks in gas hoses if metal inert gas welding process is used. Do not coil or loop electrode cable around parts of your body. Grounding is critical, so check to ensure that the welding machine frame is grounded, with special attention to ground connections. Do not ground to pipelines carrying gases or flammable liquids, or conduits carrying electrical conductors. If floor surfaces have been wetted down, special precautions must be taken against electrical shock. Do not ground to a building structure remote from the weld. If the process being used requires open circuit or no-load voltages higher than the voltages indicated in the graphic shown, adequate insulation must be provided to prevent shock. For AC welding under wet conditions, such as where perspiration is a problem, a reliable automatic control should be used to reduce the no-load voltage. This will prevent shock. Do not change the polarity switch when the machine is under load. The arcing due to high current can burn the switch contact surface or cause serious burns to the welder. Check to see that the welding machine has a power disconnect switch. This allows immediate shutdown in case of an emergency. A machine should not be used unless it has such a switch. During normal operations, store electrode holders where they cannot make electrical contact with personnel, conducting objects, fuels, or compressed gas tanks. When no welding is to be done for any substantial period of time, such as lunch or overnight, all electrodes must be removed from holders and the machine disconnected from the power source. Never strike an arc on a compressed gas cylinder. Keep electrodes, electrode holders, and any other live parts away from gas cylinders. Naturally, the material you're welding must be approved for such use. No welding should be performed on used drums, barrels, tanks, or other containers until they have been cleaned thoroughly, eliminating all flammable materials and all substances such as greases, tars or acids which might produce flammable or toxic vapors when heated. Use a cleansing agent appropriate for the gas or liquid which was in the container. Clean the container a second time with either water or steam. All hollow spaces, cavities, or containers should be vented to permit the escape of air or gases before welding. Without listing all the health hazards, let's just review a few hazards that can occur in the welding operation. Cadmium is used frequently as a rust preventative coating on steel and also as an alloying element. Acute exposures to high concentrations of cadmium fumes can produce severe lung irritation. Chromium is the primary alloying agent in stainless steel. Chromium compounds are strong oxidizing agents and are extremely toxic and irritating to the skin, eyes, and mucous membranes. Although welding under normal operations would not be expected to produce hazardous concentrations of chromium compounds, welding of stainless steel should be carried out in well-ventilated areas. Chlorinated hydrocarbon solvents are used in degreasing or other cleaning operations. The vapors of these solvents are a concern in welding because the heat and ultraviolet radiation from the arc will decompose the vapors and form highly toxic and irritating phosgene gas which can destroy lung tissue. Zinc is used in large quantities in the manufacture of brass, galvanized metals, and various other alloys. Exposure to these fumes is known to cause metal fume fever with symptoms similar to those of common influenza. The most effective measure of reducing exposure to fumes is to work in a well-ventilated area. Where this is not possible, portable ventilation systems can be used to extract welding fumes from your breathing zone. Some of the physical agents that can be harmful to welders is ultraviolet radiation when using arc welding. Skin exposure to ultraviolet radiation can result in severe burns. UV radiation can also damage the lens of the eye. Infrared radiation produced by the electric arc and other flame-cutting equipment may heat the skin surface and the tissues immediately below the skin surface. Use protective clothing to prevent this type of hazard. Intense visible light exposure to the eye can produce adaptation, pupillary reflex, and shading of the eyes. Such actions are protective mechanisms to prevent excessive light from being focused on the retina. This is particularly true in arc welding operations. Always use proper eye protection and never allow anyone to watch arc welding without proper eye protection. There are a variety of specially designed eye protection for each type of welding operation. Be sure you know what specific type eye protection is used for each operation. If you're not sure, ask your supervisor or the equipment manufacturer for specific information. Sparks may lodge in rolled-up sleeves, pockets, or cuffs. Sleeves and collars must be kept buttoned, and pockets should be removed from the front of clothing. The legs of trousers or coveralls should not be rolled up on the outside. There are literally hundreds of different rules, regulations, and procedures to follow in welding operations. We've only touched on a few. Special eye protection, respiratory protection, hearing protection, valves, gauges, hoses, fittings. All the things you need to know to make your job safer and healthier. If you're not sure about something, ask your supervisor. You may be quite familiar with the equipment and personal protection required, but you may be welding material that's unfamiliar to you. Take a minute to find out what this material is made of and what hazards it may pose to you and others. Welding is a safe operation if you follow the rules. If you try to take shortcuts or not follow proper procedures, it could become a hazardous job. Take time for safety and health because you're worth it. Thank you.